Okay, I'm going to show you a couple things that can improve your model. Alright, so I want to start with the donut on the top. And so I see what you're kind of going for, with it kind of looking like it's been like bitten off, but I'll show you a way that can get a cooler effect. And so we want something kind of like this, right? And so I'll show you a really simple way to get this kind of effect. So what we can do is we can go to our top view and we're gonna build out a torus, which is look like what you did with your donut, right? So we're gonna build that out. I'm just gonna right click and hit isolate. So there's my donut. So we want it to make it look like it was bitten out of, right? So a good way to do that is you can build a cylinder. And what we're going to make right now is effectively our bite. So how you accomplish this is that you want to make a shape that's going to represent something, like represent our bite. This tool that I'm about to show you is called ProBoolean. And what ProBoolean does is it either adds a shape to it or it takes a shape away. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna make our cut or our bite. So maybe something like that. So when I cut this out, we're gonna get kind of like a donut shape like this around the cylinder. So how you get there is you go to your create panel and you're gonna click on standard primitives right at this drop down, and you're gonna go to compound objects and you're gonna see ProBoolean right here. You click ProBoolean and you're gonna hit start picking. So all of these different things right here are what you can use. Right now I'm gonna use subtraction. And it's going to subtract this geometry on my donut right here that's intersecting with this. If you do merge, it merges these two together as one piece. If you do intersection, it'll keep this right here in the center, so on and so forth. But we want to use subtraction. So it's just as simple as hitting start picking. You're going to pick the cylinder, and you see it cut it out just like that. So right now it's still a ProBoolean. I would just right click and make it an editable poly, and voila. Whenever you're doing this, make sure that you use a cylinder that has like very few segments. So 18 is pretty good. That'll help. And so just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing that, because then it's less segments that you have to connect back together. Because you see here we have a couple weird n-gons that we need to fix, and we can do that just by using the cut tool and the target weld tool. So for example, we can target weld this right here together. We can target weld like this right here. Target weld this one. And we just want to kind of connect everything else together. So I'm going to use cut. I'm just going to turn my snaps on. Make sure that your snaps have vertex on. So you just right click on this up here to get this window. So make sure vertex is selected. And so my snaps are on. And I'm just going to click. Where am I going to click? Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to cut that. I'm just going to target weld this one to right here. And then I'm going to cut this one right here to this one. I'm going to cut this one to this one. I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to hit collapse. And it's just going to weld these two together. Collapse. See that? And then I'm just going to cut this right here. Select this one and this one. I'm going to hit collapse. This one and this one. I'm going to hit collapse. These two. I'm going to hit collapse, and these two I'm going to hit collapse. Right. I'll use the cut tool again. I'm going to cut these two together. I'm going to collapse these two. Make sure that you're not, when you're using marquee select, make sure that you're not selecting more than you need. You know, I don't want to collapse all of this because then you'll get something like that. So just be kind of cautious of using marquee select. I would just start by just selecting and then holding control and then selecting again, so that you don't make that mistake. Once you start getting used to selecting things and getting comfortable in Max, then you'll be aware if you're selecting things. So I'm just going to connect all these together, and then look, effectively I got a bite in my donut, right? So I do have some n-gons in here, like right here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. N-gons are anything that any polygons that are not 3 or 4 sided. So you just want to connect that to make sure that's 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's 1, 2, 3. So that's good. Same thing up here. Cut this one, put this here. There you go. And same thing with this one. There you go. That looks good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to unhide this, and then you can just go ahead and just move this where yours is. I'm just going to scale this up a little bit. Right. So, just think about how you want to do it. And you can get, creative with your cuts and stuff like that. So, I mean, this is effectively what it would look like instead. I think that was kind of a little bit closer to your concept of what you wanted to make. So, you can use that method. Remember, it's called ProBoolean right here. Make sure that you're on compound objects and that's standard. So, that's one thing you can do to kind of make this look a little bit better. You have some ribbons here. I know that you showed me this a little bit, just to kind of add a better effect. I would just add a small sphere. I would make it about I would just make a small sphere, and I would make it about 8 segments, so it's still pretty rough, but what I would use this for is to make it look like there's a knot here. So I just kind of place it right here and just scale this up a little bit. So now it kind of looks like there's a bit of a knot right here. Alright. There are different ways that you can do ribbons. I mean, if you like this method, that's fine. You could use a plane. That would resemble more of a ribbon. And you can just kind of build out a plane like this. Make sure that your plane has enough segments for it to deform. So I'm going to give this like maybe 15, right? Segments like that. And so if I wanted to kind of get this same type of curly thing, I have my plane built out, and I can just draw like a cool little path, right? I'm gonna increase my width of this a bit, like that, and I'm gonna make this an editable poly, and I'm gonna go to a modifier called path deform WSM. So you click that, and you're gonna pick your path. You're gonna click that, and so right now it's like along this path, so you can see if I move it, it's gonna move along the path. Click move along path, and then click X I think. Or Y, or Z, which one is it? X, flip. I'm trying to remember. I thought there was a, yeah, there's a rotation. So let's see if I can rotate this 90. Yeah, and we're gonna flip this. Yeah, so you see that, and so I can move this percentage up like that. And so if that's, say that's, you know, oh, I really like this ribbon. What sucks is you can't collapse this, right? It won't let you. So what you do is you go to Tools and you go to Snapshot, and you're gonna hit OK. And so I just made a copy. And so if I hide this one, right click, hide, here's my copy. And convert this into editable poly. So now you have that ribbon. Last step you want to do if you want to go this route is you want to go down to your modifier list and hit shell to give it thickness, right? And then you can just play with the thickness amount. So that's a technique that you can use if you want to use it for your ribbons, but if you're fine with what you have, that's okay. The last thing I would ask you to add is I would go in here, go to your splines, go to rectangle, go to your left view, and I want you to build out a rectangle. And so what you're going to do here is we're going to make a strap that kind of connects these two donuts together instead of them just sitting on top of each other. And we're going to increase the width so it's larger than both of these donuts together. We're going to right click and we're going to make an edible spline, not edible poly, but edible spline, right? And I'm going to click on refine. What refine's going to do, I have vertexes selected. What refine is going to do is it's going to give me another vertex. So I want to do that for both. And the reason why I want to do that for both is because I want to drag these down around here, kind of like that. And I'm going to drag these guys up, kind of like this, and bring him in some. I'm going to bring him in some. And honestly, I haven't done this before like this, so I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen. So I'm going to do a fillet. I'm going to do a fillet. I'm going to do a fillet. And then I'm going to do another fillet. So you kind of effectively have like this kind of shape. You can probably use an oval. I mean, also, I don't know. It's kind of dumb. Let's try that instead. Let's use an ellipse. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to build an ellipse this time. So I'm clicking F3 to go into wireframe. You could also go in here and do it. So like we're in default shading, but if you want to go to wireframe, you can just do wireframe override. That's fine too. And that'll help you kind of see through your object a bit. So I have this built right here. This is probably better than what I was doing. I was kind of doing it harder. Yeah, that works. I'm going to scale this. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I'm going to bring my length down a little bit. Bring him here. I'm going to squash him like that. And then I'm going to right click editable spline. And then so you kind of did it here when you did like a little radial band like that. If you want to use that one, you can. I kind of like this one, this rectangular one. It kind of resembles more of a strap than what you had. I'm gonna increase his size a little bit. Yeah, so you can kind of get a more of a band like look with your model. So you can kind of see that it looks like it's strapped on there now. And then you can go in here and probably mess with, you know, your anchors a little bit so that it's not just like This band is just kind of sitting out, but it kind of looks like it's more taut around your other donut, and then you can just convert that into an edible poly, right? And that's not too bad. Okay, so I'm gonna hide this. All right, so where you're at, oh, also, I mean, if you decide to keep this, that's fine. I think it'll look better with the method that I showed you, but make sure that you close these up. So select polygon mode, click insert, and then collapse. So you want to make sure it looks like that. But anyway, I'm going to attach this, and I'm going to show you how to unwrap. Okay, so your model's complete. Right, now you're going to have to unwrap this. So we're going to select our model, look for unwrap. I just typed in UN, so it went down to unwrap UVW. You want to click that. Okay, so here are your UVs, right? A good way to kind of start fresh, and you don't want all of this like gunk, is select polygon over here. And I don't know if you've been paying attention much on UV unwrapping, but unwrapping is a method that can help you texture your model in Photoshop or in other texturing programs or painting programs. What we're effectively trying to do is to cut up our model in a way that we can get its faces into this checkered box right here so that we can paint. This checkered box represents the pixel space that you would have inside of a Photoshop document or a Substance Painter document. So this checkered box could be 1024 by 1024 pixels, or 2048 by 2048 pixels, 2K, or 4096 by 4096, 4K. This doesn't represent an amount of pixel density, because this is in here is what's called texel density. A little bit advanced, but just know that whatever you export this out, so let's say that I'll just pack all these. Okay, so let's say these are my UVs, which they're not. I mean, these are my UVs, but this isn't properly unwrapped. So let's say that I'm done, and so I would go to Tools, Render out UVW template, and you see here it's 1024 by 1024. So I can increase this to whatever I want, 2048 by 2048, whichever. So that's kind of what I'm saying. But to get like a fresh start on our UVs, you just select polygon over here. It has 3 different selection modes: vertex, edges, and polygons. And this over here, select by element, so it'll select all of my polygons. If I select this, boom, so it selects them by element. Or if I do edges, it'll select all of my edges, like that. You see that? Or if I select my vertexes, it'll select all of my vertexes, like that. So I'm gonna do by polygon, and I'm gonna select everything. So I'm just gonna marquee select, and over here is what's called a projection map. And so these, and you can kind of see like this little yellow outline right here is our projection map. So right now I have a plane, and you'll see when I change the alignment on my plane, it'll change. And you'll see over here it's also going to change. So if I do X, you see my projection right here. It's projecting it as if I were looking at it from the X-axis, so like this point of view right here. Or more effectively, I think it's probably this point of view. So it's projecting my UVs to look at this point of view. If I do Y, it's going to look at it from this point of view. You see that? If I do Z, it's going to look at it from this point of view. So you just kind of follow this. So we're going to do it from the Y, because that's kind of like our frontal view. I can't stress this enough. Whenever you're in projection mode, make sure you turn it off, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to do anything. Well, it's off now, but when you're in projection mode, you won't be able to. You'll be like, why can't I select anything? Why can't I cut? Why can't I, because you're still in projection mode, so make sure you turn that off. And now you can select stuff. But whenever you're doing projection mode, I mean, there's all these other different ones you can use: cylinder, sphere, square. So sometimes if you have shapes like those, you can use that. But I always like using planar. Okay, so I'm turning off element mode. In this window, you can see it has the same selection modes in here as it does over here. Here's your select by element, so it's kind of the same thing. Sorry, see, I couldn't select anything because I have my projection mode on. So you see, I can select everything here just like I did over here. Saying it's kind of the same button toggle right here. We want to cut our UVs. So I usually cut my UVs using edges, so I have edges selected. I'm going to turn this off. And whenever you're cutting UVs, you're going to use the same like 3 or 4 tools to get the job done. And once you get comfortable doing this and you keep practicing, the easier it becomes. So since these shapes are really difficult shapes, it's going to be pretty fast how we're going to unwrap these. So I'm just going to double click this line right here. And you see by double clicking it just wrapped around the whole thing. See, I could double click that too and it'll wrap around, and it's showing it here too. But I'm just going to double click this, and this is good, and I'm going to cut this one. And so there's a button over here called break, and that's going to break your UVs apart. So if I break it, and if I go back to polygon and to select by element, I'm going to have 2 pieces here. I'm going to have this piece, and I'm going to have this piece, right? So a good way to tell how your UVs are looking, and this is a very useful tool, is to have this texture map. That'll help you see what your UVs are going to look like. So I can provide this to you. I use it as well. I don't use it as much anymore because I've done UVs for quite some time, so I've kind of gotten comfortable doing it without kind of looking at it. But this is very good to start with. And so I'm just going to apply this texture on here. And so the name of the game is you want to make sure that these number squares are as square as possible. So right now it's like a rectangle and it's a bit stretched. So if you were to put a texture on here, it's going to be stretched like this. So let's say you put like a really nice baguette texture on here. It's going to pull your texture and it's going to stretch it. And so to fix that, we need to do something called relaxing, and you're going to see the effect here, or right here, right? So to get to relax, you go to tools, relax, and this little window is going to pop up. You can relax by edges or centers, but 90% of the time you're going to use by polygon. The amount here, you never really mess with iterations. I never needed to. I usually mess with the amount, and so the amount is how strong my relax is going to be. So if I use 0.1, right, that's how slow it moves. But let me go back. If I do 1.0, look how fast it's going to relax, right? So that's just the strength. And so if you look here, look at our UVs now. They're way better. They're less stretched. They're more square. If I were to scale this up, just to kind of get you a better idea, you see that it's square. It's perfect. Over here, on the other hand, let's look. If I scale this up, you see how they're really long, and that's square, and they're flipped, right? So I want to flip this. There's a button right here called mirror vertically. So it's going to flip it. You see that? Maybe you couldn't see that. Let me Control Z. So you just click this button and it's going to flip it. And let's relax this one too. So something that's really cool, and let me maximize this window so you can see, is these green edges right here represent edges that have been broken, right? If I select a edge, let me turn off my element mode here. If I select an edge right here, this red one is selected. This blue one over here is saying, hey, we connect together. So if I look over here, this purple edge is these two edges connected, right? So if I were to join these two together, because you want to, I would double click this edge, and I'm going to get all of these, but I only want half of these, and I'm going to show you why. A little less than half. About like right there. I want to join these two together. And so over here are your stitch tools, right here. And these stitch tools help you stitch your UVs together. So this one stitches to target, so it's going to stitch it all the way over here. This one stitches to average, so it's going to stitch in the center. This one is going to stitch to the source, so it's just going to stitch this way instead of that way, like this one did. The one that I use a lot is Stitch Custom, and it's going to stitch it over to the model. Boom. So I have these stitched together, but kind of a problem is that I got all of this mess in the center. And so you can just grab these and then relax them again. And you see I still kind of got a little bit of weird stuff going on. I can fix that if I just maybe cut these right here. So I'm just going to control select those. I'm going to break those, and then I'm going to relax again. And you see that? That's beautiful. That's what we want. I can probably cut these too, but I think that's good. So let's see what it looks like. Look at that. That's gorgeous. That's what we want our UVs to look like when we're unwrapping. See that? That's nice. It is kind of twisting a little bit right here. So you're never going to get it perfect. Sometimes you will, but I mean, let's see what happens if we cut it right here. These three, just like how we did at the top. See if we get kind of a better result. Yeah, they're still kind of doing that at the center, but you got to really pick and choose your battles. I think that this is okay. You should be able to get away with this, not a problem. But all in all, this is pretty good. So I think you'll be okay with that. So let's move this guy to the side. He's finished. Okay, let's get your donuts. So we can do something very similar. We're going to cut on the inside, and we're going to cut on the outside like this, and then we're going to cut like this. So we're going to cut on the inside, we're going to cut on the outside like this, and we're going to cut right here. So 3 cuts, right? So I'm going to select this one and this one. I'm going to relax these. Actually, I'm not going to do that 3rd cut. I'm going to do just 2. I'm just going to do this one and this one. And I'm just going to cut those. Grab these 2, and I'm just going to relax them. So sometimes they get caught in itself like this, but it looks like my UVs are backwards, so I'm going to flip them again. Actually, no, they're not backwards, they're right. But I'm just going to flip them. Sometimes if you flip them and then you unwrap, that didn't work. Let me see. Okay. So I'm going to use edges this time because for some reason polygon isn't working. And you can kind of see it's a little within itself right here. So instead of using polygon, let's use edges. And that fixed it. And I can go back to polygon and fix that. So I want to make sure that these are rotated right. So I'm going to go to my rotation tool. And I'm just going to make sure that they're facing the right way, like that. That's good. And these are good. So these 2 are done. I'm just going to pack them right here. So these buttons right here are called your packing or your arrange elements, but I just call them like your packing tools. These are going to put everything that you've made into this space. I never really use any of the other ones, like Rescale. I don't use any of those. I just use Pack Custom, and that just gets everything that I unwrapped and pack it in there. You got a lot of seeds, which will suck to unwrap. But well done on the modeling of the seeds. They look pretty good. Let's cut these donuts right here. This one, and we can cut this one like that. Same thing. Let's grab both of these, relax them. So we kind of have a very similar issue to the other one. We're going to go to edges, relax it by edges, and then we're going to relax it by polygons again. And so it's probably a little twisted. We're going to rotate it like that. That's good. And we're going to pack those as well, and we're going to move them out. And the reason why I'm doing that, I'm just making sure that these are consistent, that these are roughly the same size, because if you have, you know, some that are this big in your UV space, imagine, I'm trying to think how to explain this. So remember earlier I was talking about pixel density in your Photoshop document, and maybe opening up a Photoshop document will help. The more space you take up in your UV space, the more you're going to get in your texture, the more resolution you're going to get in your texture. So I'm going to make a 2048 by 2048 texture document. So I'm going to create a new one, 2048 by 2048. Okay. So what 248 by 248 means is that's 248 pixels. So I have 248 pixels in my scene right here. If I were to come over, if I were to drag a ruler over to the center, this requires a little bit of math, but these are pretty standard across the board. Okay, so if this is 248 pixels, this whole thing, these in here are 1024 by 1024, because if you add 1024 times 2, you're going to get 2048. And so if I had my UVs in here, if I only take up, let's say, this much space, I'm not getting a good amount of resolution. I want to make sure that I maximize my resolution. So by doing that, I just pack these in here to make sure that I'm going to get a good amount of resolution. And always think about what you want to show. What's going to be something that's going to be really detailed, right? Like if this donut's going to have icing on it and it's going to be, you know, super detailed, then that's going to be one of the biggest elements in your UVs in here. It's going to be big. It doesn't mean it has to be gigantic, but it's going to have to take up enough space, because just like in here, remember, this is 1024, this is 1024, this is 1024, this is 1024, and all of this right here, this whole canvas is 2048. Then that means that if I cut this in half, or in fours and a quarter, this is 1024, this is 1024, this is 1024, and this is 1024, and this is 2048. But remember, this can be any size you want it to be. So if it were a 1024, then it would be 512, 512, 512, 512. If it were a 512, it would be 256, 256, 256, 256. Anyway, that's just math, but I'm just trying to stress the importance of maximizing your space. Okay. I know that was a lot, but anyway, let's finish this up. So I'm going to unwrap this part and this part, and I'm just going to break it here. I'm going to double loop it here. So I'm going to just double click right there. Whenever you're doing your UVs, you want to make sure that you're hiding your edge or your UVs. And what I mean by that is, you see I put it in here, I cut it here instead of up here or right here on the side, is because you're going to notice whenever you're making your textures that some edges are not going to align, right? And so when that happens, you're going to see a break in your texture, and it's going to look weird. You're going to have this weird seam, and you're like, what the? And that's because your edges don't connect. And that's okay. It just takes a little bit more time in the texturing process to get those edges to align. But wherever you hide your seams, if there are seams, like breaks in your texture that don't look right, then you can hide them and people won't notice. And so a lot of the times people are hiding their seams when they're doing texture work like this. So just be cautious of where you put your seams. Okay. All right. So this one isn't wanting to unwrap properly, so I'm going to cut it where it's kind of clenching up right here in the center. And if I cut it, it's kind of like cutting a shoelace in half, right? So I got two pieces now. And I want these to be straight, right? You see how these are straight? Like that. I want these to be straight. Right now they're kind of curled. So I want them to be straight. And so I'm going to show you a new tool. So if you double click on these horizontal lines, if you go up here, there's a thing called a line vertically. And so I don't want to use this one because it's just going to smush them together like that. What I want to do is if you click and hold, you're going to get a drop down and you're going to get this one. If you click that one, you see that? It made them straight. And I'm just going to select all these in the center and the horizontal lines. So I'm going to select those, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. And then I'm just going to attach it back together. So I'm going to click this guy, and then I'm just going to hit, there you go. And now they're straight. I'm going to do the same thing with him. I'm going to cut him. Like the shoelace, cut them in half. Like that. Let me rotate them around. And then I'm just going to select both of these just like this. Just like how I did with the other one. I'm going to do that. And then you can just click these two and hit this button right here, which is a ring. Right? And so it rings it. You can do that too. And I'm just going to select him. Boom. Okay. So I'm going to select these guys, and I'm going to pack them. And then I'm just going to bring them out here. So, you know, it's a pattern in which you do this, and it just makes it way easier when you're unwrapping. It's just, you're going to use the same 4 tools. It's really the thing that you're learning, really, is you're just learning where to cut, right? So I'm just trying to pick spots in my UVs that I feel that my cut is going to unwrap my model properly. And it's going to take you some time to figure it out, but with these basic shapes you're going to see like how I'm cutting them. I would go back in here also and kind of push this guy up because he's kind of intersecting with the donut, but you get what I mean. So I'm going to cut this guy like that. And I'm going to relax him. And so I'm going to get something like this. Take him out, take him out. So here's my donut. Like that. And so here he is here. And so he's done. So I'm just going to pull him here. Okay, then you got this guy right here. Very interesting shape. So how am I going to cut him? So what I would do, I would cut these pieces off right here as a starting point. Like that. And I'm just going to cut these guys off. And I'm going to relax them. Okay, so didn't really do what I wanted to do, but that's okay. Let's use projection again. So let's project him right here. We want to project him on the Y, right? It's not working either. Okay, yeah, so they're two separate pieces. Yeah, projection's fine. Let's just pick one of these random horizontal lines like that. Just cut them. Let me select these guys. I'm gonna hit unwrap or relax. Perfect. So that worked. We just gotta figure this guy out. So let's choose a horizontal line. So let's choose like this guy, or this vertical line, sorry. And let's choose him on the opposite side. And same over here. I'm going to cut them. And then we're going to relax them. So we're getting there. There's some things that we can still cut because he's still kind of intertwined in himself. So let's cut him here. There we go. Look at that. Cut him here too. There we go. Beautiful. So he's done. Let's pack him in. Pull him out. And these guys right here are pretty simple. All you're going to have to do is just select them like that. All the way down. Right there. And then when you get to the bottom, see this is why you want to collapse these, because I can't double click this. So I just got to go all the way around like that. And around like this. Make sure you collapse these. Okay, grab them and relax them. And relax them. So they're cinching up in a couple different places, you see that? And so you can just grab them in those places that are cinched, double click. Like that. And just break them. And then relax them. See that? And then you can go back and then just connect them back together. Custom. Sometimes whenever you do like stitch custom, it doesn't stitch this last vertices, so you have to go to vertices and then you can just stitch it. Same thing over here. Stitch him in like that. Just like that. Make sure you get all of them in here, so get this guy too. There we go. And he's done. Now we gotta cut him out. And you gotta break this guy too. There you go. Okay, so you do that with all of those. You can really leave these seeds kind of how they are. What I would suggest in the future, but you didn't know this, is I would just make one seed and unwrap it, and then you can just texture that one seed in here, and then you can just copy it later, but it's fine. So once all of these are done, you're just gonna pack it like that, and you see how much space this stuff is taking up, which is good. If you wanted more UV space for this, and then what I would do if I had your model is I would scale this guy down a little bit because he's just a strap. And I would come and bring him here. Move this guy. You kind of play a little Tetris. Let's scale him up a little bit. Scale him down like that. And scale him up. Kind of get him some more texture resolution. And then you can come in here and you can put him over here. And what's really neat too about things like this is like you can you know, customize your UVs the way that you want them to be. So I'm gonna just shrink him a little bit and put him here, and then put these guys here. Okay, so make sure that none of your UVs are touching each other. That's important. Make sure that none of your UVs are outside of this over here. That's major. That's really major too. Okay. All right. Once you do that, you go to Tools, Render, and then you just make what size you want your texture document to be. You hit Render, and here are your UVs. Right there. You just save this out on your desktop. You just name it, you know, donut sword UV. Make it a JPEG or a PNG and just save it, and you just open that in Photoshop and you texture it, and that's it. Make sure you get that to me. Make sure you get your reference image to me as well. If you have any questions, just, you know, text me or send me an email. I'll send you this video in Canvas if I can, if it'll let me. If not, I'll find another way to get it to you, but I'll send you another video that I found on YouTube that'll show you how to make mask textures so that you won't have to go in Photoshop and like, you know, magic wand all this stuff and then texture it, but it'll show you a cool way to use mask. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you need any other advice or any other tips. All right.